Welcome back to another episode of the North Star Takes podcast. I'm Bailey Paulicki. He's Jacob Liberta, and we're a Minnesota sports podcast. So if you're a Minnesota sports fan, please click that like button on this video and hit the subscribe button on this channel. And also feel free to tell a friend about our Minnesota sports conversations. And today we're talking about the Minnesota Wild, specifically Kirill Kaprizov. About a month out from training camp, so there's not a whole lot to talk about right now. It's kind of the dead of the NHL offseason. But we're just going to kind of talk about where Kirill Kaprizov ranks among the league's best players, because NHL Network was kind of doing this countdown the other day about where he ranks among the best wings in the NHL. So we can kind of dip into that a little bit as well, Liberta, but also just where is he at in terms of being one of the best players in the NHL. So I guess to start off with, I mean, where do you kind of see him in both realms in terms of being the best, one of the best overall players and also being the best at his specific position?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to say I'm just glad he's back stateside for the season. I think that's good to see, just because that would obviously make or break the Wild seasons pretty easily just with one guy. But as far as this, that's how big of that's kind of what I was going to go into, is that's how big of a difference he makes and how good he is, or a testament to how good he is. And kind of starting with the wing conversation, like saw on NHL Network the other day, I dare to say, I think he's the cream of the crop, really. When you consider all the best wings and you consider how everybody stacked up last year, as far as points go, that's usually probably the first thing you start with. And, I think he kind of stands head and shoulders above everybody, especially when it comes to potential, too, and, longevity and seasons to come, where he's going to go compared to these others he's really up there with. Because there's, Gaudreau, who was number 2 in points last year, and then he's followed by Huberdeau, who was number 3, and, both those guys are pushing 30, if not 30 already. And so where Kaprizov's only 25 right now. So you consider other players that were around him as far as these points leaders go. The only two that felt like they're in the same bin were Marner for Toronto, and then you had Tkachuk for Calgary. But both of those players, they're around the same age as Kaprizov, both young and dynamic in their own right. But the thing is, they also had superior line mates compared to Kaprizov. It's Marner's playing with Austin Matthews, who's arguably the best center in the league. And then you got, it's him and McDavid for me anyway. And then you consider, he's Austin Matthews' points machine too. He's scoring goals right and left, and it's just a heavy point producing line. Yeah. And then you consider Tkachuk, he's playing with Gaudreau, who's fantastic in his own right last year too. So it's then you stack it up. It's who's Kaprizov playing with? It's Ryan Hartman on that nice $1.5 million contract, having a career year last year. And it's I wonder why that is. And it's Mats Zuccarello, same thing. This dude's high 30s or mid 30s, and he's 34, 35 years old, has a career season. Matt's got carried to the point where he's 4th all time in Minnesota Wild history in points in a single season. The only people who were better than him were Fiala and Kaprizov last year, and then Gaborik 1 year back in 2007, I think it was. So it's that's not, don't get me wrong, Zuccarello's a solid player, but he's not that good. So it's talk about Kaprizov single-handedly carrying a guy. It's you said the one time that's really resonated with me. I always hang on to this one. It was perfect when Zuccarello started playing great last year. It's Kirill Kaprizov single-handedly revived Matt Zuccarello's career. After Fenton signed with that awful contract, it's man, this guy's got nothing left in the tank to give. So it's this would just be us eating money for how long now to get nothing out of it. But now it's man, he's actually a contributing player on our first line. So it's that's single-handedly Kaprizov. So when you think about the impact Kaprizov has both on the ice, being 5th overall in points, not just among the wings, but among players in the NHL, and then you're considering how big of an impact he has on those around him, that's incredible. That can't go understated. I don't think people give him enough recognition for that at this point. I think he will earn his stripes, or really get his looks, really. I mean to say, come these next couple seasons, when I think he just grows into a better player. If that feels possible right now, it's kind of insane where he's at already. But you think about that, and it's crazy. And it's amazing we have one of these just generational talents on our team. It's amazing. I mean, he's already the best player in franchise history. So it's who knows where this guy could go? Because he only played really a little over a season and a half's worth of games with this Wild team. And I feel like he's shown all that you need to see. And it's this guy's going to be awesome. It just needs to come now with some playoff success with this Wild team. And then people will know the name quite clearly, and everybody's going to know this is a top 5 player in the league. So I don't know. Where do you think he stacks up right now, Bailey?
Yeah, I'd say, him and Anthony Edwards, just to compare them, they're in very similar situations in terms of we as local fans know how freaking good these guys are. But like you mentioned, they need the playoff success. They need the national notoriety. People need to start recognizing them, but that won't happen until they're playing on these national stages. But, I'll stop short of, saying he's up there with a McDavid or an Austin
Sure.
Matthews or even a Leon Draisaitl, who I think really benefits from playing with Connor McDavid. But at the same
Hmm.
time, he's a very gifted player. But, and I'm just talking in totality of players here, not necessarily just wings. But, Huberdeau had easily his best season of his career last year. And he gets traded straight up for a Matthew Tkachuk from Calgary. I mean, that's just kind of an odd move that either team would want to trade those guys, considering how good of seasons they had.
Hmm.
Um, like you mentioned, Goudreau, now he's on the Columbus Blue Jackets, who really don't have much else to write home about. So,
No, let's get that
um,
bag.
yeah, I mean, Goudreau's a very good player. I'd put him and Kaprizov about neck and neck, honestly.
Hmm.
Nathan McKinnon, he was hurt for a while last year, and he's also a center. But I mean, Nathan McKinnon's one of the top 5 players in the NHL, and he's healthy. But I would say Kirill's got to be right on that cusp, somewhere between 5 and 8, probably for me. Um, yeah, like you mentioned, he single-handedly resurrected Matt Zuccarello's career. He's just in terms of what the actual meaning of MVP, most valuable player. I mean, he's got to be right up there because he's just like you mentioned, he was dragging that line last year to career highs in points for both Hartman and Zuccarello. The tear he went on towards the mid to end of the season was unbelievable. After the slow start to the season he had, where he didn't score in like the first 8 or 9 games, um, just incredible to end up with 108 points when he did basically nothing those first 8 or 9 games. So I mean, just an absolute tear. And like you mentioned, he's probably just scratching the surface of his potential because, I mean, yeah, he's already 25 years old because he was in Russia for so long, but that's still a relatively young player. And he's only been in the NHL, like you said, basically a year and a half. So, I mean, as he gets more and more experience in this league, and I mean, he's going to be in his prime for a while here. I don't think there's any slowing him down unless he gets injured, which, God forbid that happens because in the Wild are really in trouble. But they've done a pretty good job of protecting him. If guys go after him, the Wild, send guys after those guys. So um, I'm glad to see that, they stick up for him and they obviously realize how important he is to the team. So, man, I mean, we're just blessed to have just an absolutely gifted player like this on our team. Like you mentioned, once in a generation. And you could honestly, kind of say the same thing with, Justin Jefferson with the Vikings and Anthony Edwards with the Wolves. It's like, it looks like, we just have a good collection of really young talent, specifically potential superstars on each one of those 3 teams. And yeah, it's crazy to think about, but yeah, Kaprizov is definitely up there among the league's best. And it's crazy to say that after only, basically a year and a half of play.
I know, and these 3 guys have only played each a couple of years in their respective leagues, and it's like they're already asserting themselves as like I I would say like top 5 players. Well, in Kaprizov's case, I think he's already the best player in franchise history. I
Yes.
think he's trending in a great direction right now. Just obliterate all these team records that exist. But then it's like Ant. I feel like he's already up there as far as like natural talent goes, and especially how this next season's going to go. At least I think. Then I
Hmm.
think he'll be right up there, better than anybody besides probably KG, and then eventually that
Right.
he could pass KG. And then as far as Justin Jefferson goes, I think he could be a top 5 player in Vikings history when it's all said and done. Like especially with the direction he's going. I mean, 3,000 receiving yards 2 seasons, but that was a wild video. But yeah, just kind of admire the fact that we have
Right.
these 3 guys that are just like all here at the same time and just making they're the best. I think they're the best at their and not quite yet, but the other 2 I think are the best of their positions in the league. So it's like this
Yeah.
they're really making a name for themselves pretty quickly. So gotta really admire that to really gotta appreciate that really. So
Yeah.
I think with Kaprizov too, and kind of going to more intangible things. It's just that another thing that makes him special is just that his ability to see the ice and
Hmm.
the ability to really just skate. And it's just funny. I always go back to that. It's like his scouting report is like, oh, I don't know if he'll be able to skate in the NHL, but it's like
Hmm.
that sounds like foolery right now because this guy can do whatever he wants and he just makes things happen. And I mean, he gets the Wild. How many times were we down last year where he just got us back in the game and all of a sudden we won that one? And
Hmm.
that's how we scored how many goals and those 6-on-5 situations at the end of the game too, and numerous occasions. So it's like this guy can do it all, and that's just I think he's just slowly, or not really slowly, I think he's steadily, I guess I should say, climbing the ranks of these NHL players overall, not just wings, but just everybody. So I'm pretty excited to see what year 3 has in store for him.
Yeah, you mentioned his skating. I think his hands are fantastic
Yeah,
too. I mean,
yeah,
there
true.
was so many goals last year. It was like a quick one-timer, and he basically just like didn't even move his stick. He was just kind of able to slide it in a little bit, direct it into the net. Those shootout goals where it looks like he wasn't even trying, and he just casually lifts it over the goalie's shoulder. I
Yeah,
mean, he's absolutely gifted when it comes to his hands. And like you mentioned, I mean, the fact he's able to skate when they didn't know if he'd be able to skate in the NHL, um, that's obviously super encouraging. And then when he doesn't have the puck, I mean, he's aggressive. He'll go after loose pucks. He'll take pucks away from guys. It's not like he's not really a Gabrick who kind of waited for his
yeah,
opportunities and then would take off down the ice. Kaprizov's not that type of player. So
yeah,
yeah, the Wild are super fortunate to have a player like him. Like you mentioned in the beginning of the video, I'm glad he's back stateside. He's safe. He's going to be here for the season, and yeah, I look forward to watching him as his career goes on here. I think we're super lucky that we get to watch a player of his caliber play for the Minnesota Wild because we obviously haven't seen that before. So, any other final thoughts from you before we take off here?
yeah. I think everybody in Minnesota obviously knows the name quite well, but I think give it time, give it another season or two, and I think everybody across the NHL it'll be like a unanimous thing where he's just a consensus top for sure top 10 player, if not top 5. So
Yeah.
I think this time will come, but we just gotta be patient.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. That's going to do it for this edition of the North Star Takes podcast. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, help spread the word of our Minnesota sports conversations by clicking the like button on this video and subscribing to the channel as well. Feel free to give us a follow on both Twitter and Instagram. And let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Where would you rank Kirill Kaprizov among the league's best players, maybe among players at his own position, and just what you think makes him so great and one of the best players, if not the best player in Minnesota Wild franchise history. So until next time, thanks for watching.